Hey guys, Mike here from Mercado Airwaves. We want to thank you so much for all the support you've given us here on the network. And if you want to see what we're up to outside of the station, please follow us all over social media. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media and on Instagram at Mike Mercado Media. You can follow the good brother Alex Mercado on Twitter at Mercado21Alex and on Instagram at Mercado2121. The lovely Nicole Mancha is on all social media platforms at Typing When Tipsy. You can follow the network on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. Our pop culture show, The Good Brothers, on Twitter at Good Brothers Pod. Our true crime shows on Instagram at Murder, Mysteries, and More. And of course, like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. You can see all our videos on YouTube.com/Mike Mercado 2333 or by searching Mercado Airwaves Network. We play video games on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves Network. And of course, you can support our network by finding a tier just for you, whether you want early access, you want to be part of polls, you want to win contest prizes, by visiting us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. And we really appreciate it wherever you get your favorite podcast to like, rate, review, and share us. And please spread the word. For the good brother, Alex Mercado, for the lovely Nicole Mancha, I'm Mike Mercado. Thank you so much for all the support you've given us here on the network. And we are back here on Outreach Radio Chicago and Mercado Airwaves with your host, Mike Mercado. Hope each and everyone is being safe and sound. And we are continuing our very serious, informative conversation and this view of what's been going on around, not just in the last 5 days, last week, but heck, the last 200 years, last 400 years, the last 1,000 years since humanity has been around. And joining me today, two great people, Everitt O'Neal, Courtney Baxter. Everitt, my brother from Illinois Media Center, Illinois Center for Broadcasting, have known him for so many years, does a great job over at WXLC, Saturday and Sundays from 8 to midnight. And Courtney Baxter, one of the great humans that we have, historian, museum educator. Thank you, guys. You can check out Courtney's work actually at historicallycourtney.wordpress.com. Everitt, all over the radio and interwebs. Everitt, Courtney, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and appreciate the build-up, by the way.
Oh, you know what it is, kid. Before we get to the seriousness, I got to get my people some hype. They don't call me the Paul Heyman of radio for no reason.
I appreciate it. I feel more famous than I am.
Well,
Right.
I'm glad, and you guys can tell that there's a lot of love, there's a lot of admiration, and there's a lot of good vibes on this chat right now. And I hope that we can bring this to each and every one of you who are listening to this in the Chicago and Chicagoland area, Indiana, Northwest and Northeast Indiana, and some of you in Michigan, and everybody listening in the internet. So there's no easy transition. There's no good transition. There's no smooth transition into what we're about to talk about. But on this chat today, we have a black woman, a black man, and a Latino man talking about some of the stuff that's going on in our country. And before we get started, I want to just let everybody know that we understand that we can never give every perspective in the world. There's only so many people who could join a chat. But the most important thing right now is to open up communication with the people who are telling us about their suffering and their pain. People listened to us when we talked about being called rapists and monsters by the man in charge in the White House. People had our backs. And now, as a Latino man, as somebody who's seen his people in recent news go through some of the most horrendous things anybody in the modern era has seen, our black brothers and sisters are asking for help. And I am opening up my platform to do the right thing, and that is to talk about these things. And I'm going to start with Courtney. When you hear Black Lives Matter, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I actually think about Ferguson, and just because right before I moved to St. Louis for some time, that's kind of when everything came off in Ferguson and kind of led to Black Lives Matter, or did actually, being established as a hashtag and an organization. So that's what I think of first.
Everitt?
First word I think of is inclusion, because we are just trying to say that we matter as well, not that we only matter.
Now, earlier today, Biggie, you and I were doing a sound check, breaking the fourth wall. And you gave me a very powerful sentiment and story that you talking about with one of your other friends. Can you kind of bring that back to all the people listening today on Outreach Radio Chicago?
Oh man, I felt like I went off the rails within that story. I have a tendency to do that. But I think I first started with it was a TikTok video actually from a white woman, and she gave the metaphor of like a group of friends sitting at a table, and how one friend never got his plate while everyone else around him is eating, and he kept saying, "I'm hungry," and the person next to him is saying, "Well, we're all hungry," but he's like, "Yeah, but I'm really hungry, and you all are still eating." So it's like, where's my plate? And we have been just waiting for our plate to be delivered to us for some time now. Like, we just want to be given the same luxury to live and not have to watch our back, or keep our head on a swivel, wondering if like something's going to happen to us as we walk out the door. And even in certain cases, if people walk in our door. And so we're just tired of, I guess, the fear mindset of not knowing when we'll be able to eat peacefully.
Courtney, when you hear that and you hear those powerful words from Everitt, what goes through your mind?
Yeah, I just think about it. It's kind of interesting to me that for some white people or other non-Black people of color, that they really are that disconnected from the experience of a lot of Black people or other people we might call minorities, that some people really don't get it. They really don't get what their privilege is, what kind of experiences that we might have. And from their viewpoint, they're seeing all these kind of situations really differently than maybe someone like us in this group talking right now would see it. And so in some ways you want to, like, or at least I do, in some ways I want to be kind of a teacher about it, as much as I can say from my own experience, but I can't speak for everyone. And on the other hand, you get really tired, right, of explaining something like this when it's been an issue for a long time and it's not a recent thing. So it's kind of difficult to keep going back and forth, but I think it's necessary to do so. So sometimes you got to break it down in a way even you might do for a child, to explain discrimination and privilege and things like systematic racism. It's just so much going on, and it's all really layered.
So when we talk about all lives matter, even Everett and I were talking about this, all lives matter. Even when it's at its innocence, even when it's your friend who calls themselves an ally, who generally speaking tries to do their best when it comes to social injustice, but they can't bring themselves to understand why Black Lives Matter and all lives matter is contradiction of each other. And the best, when we were talking about this, a wrestler who for the longest time was considered kind of a bad guy actually tweeted out something like, I used to always believe all lives matter until I was told and I was explained that all lives can't matter until Black lives do. And that's the difference. Mm-hmm. When you hear that, though, from some of your friends, from, some of the different circles that we've all ran around, that they can't understand the difference between Black lives and all lives, can you teach them? Are they able to be taught the difference? Is it one of these moments that it is what it is?
No, I think there's still like hope for people learning to understand that. But of course, people have to start from like a posture of being open that they might be wrong about something. I think that's the issue with a lot of things, with a lot of arguments. You have to be willing to be wrong about something, be willing to listen and expand on what you thought you knew. And so sometimes, you're going to get pushback from certain people who will never accept, something like Black Lives Matter. But I think for people who are kind of in the middle, floating around, maybe a little indifferent, or the people who are eager to learn, those are the people that you kind of wrangle up and kind of show them. And like I said, you kind of have to break it down, because I feel like it's like going to, let's say, a breast cancer walk. You're not going to go to like a breast cancer walk and be like, what about all diseases? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, all diseases are important. But the reason, for instance, historically, actually, breast cancer awareness became a big thing is because for so long it was actually taboo for people to talk kind of about cancer, but specifically about breast cancer. And so now, it's everywhere and we feel like it's totally normal. But yeah, we wouldn't go somewhere and say, well, what about people dying from heart disease? Or what about this? No, we're raising awareness about this because this needs our attention. It's the same thing for Black Lives Matter.
Everitt, I know how strong you felt about this exact situation. What did you feel when you heard that from me earlier about people not understanding or not wanting to understand the difference of Black Lives Matters and All Lives Matters?
Well, I had a chance to think about it, and I had to think about actual certain conversations I've had with people who consider themselves allies. And it brought up another thing that you mentioned, which was the Obama effect, because a lot of this started happening while Obama was still in office.
Mm-hmm.
So it was hard for them to really grasp, Black Lives Mattering or this kind of being an issue because, we had a Black president. And so, we're progressing. And so to a lot of them, it kind of felt like we were crying wolf. And, a lot of them, it's like they wanted to, but like they didn't want to dip their toe in just yet. And so I would get a lot of pushback. I would get like, well, what about gay lives? Or what about Muslim lives? Or what about, German lives? And I'm like, well, all three of those include Black people. You could be Black and gay. You could be Black and Muslim. You could be Black and German. And so like it all intersects with one another. You know what I mean? And but like they still wouldn't buy into it. And unfortunately, I mean, if we're going to just get right into it, if we want to talk about the allies we're speaking of is like white people, white liberal people to be specific. They needed, and me and Courtney talk about this a lot. Donald Trump was the necessary evil they needed to realize that we weren't crying wolf and lying the whole time about what's been happening. Like they needed to have their world rocked as well to realize that, they weren't lying, at all. Not even just about our plight, but, whatever battles they were fighting as well, as far as like, feminism and the patriarchy and whatnot, is like all of a sudden now they wanted to unite and come together, for a cause. But like it took for them to be inconvenienced, for them to finally start to listen to us and be an ally. And even then, like it was still hard for them to like really buy in. It took George Floyd for him to just be straight up murdered. Like they didn't need to hear the backstory. They didn't need to see what else happened. Like the man was handcuffed with a knee on his neck. And that's when they realized like, this is really a thing. This is really real. Like this is happening. And so it gets frustrating because it's like, how much more do you need to see? How much more convincing do you need? How many times do we need to cry wolf before the wolf just eats our entire tribe, Yeah.
Courtney, Biggie brings up a wonderful point about when he's bringing with his passion. It's something that I try to brought into the conversation was this Obama effect where, you even see it in Get Out where the dad says, I would have voted for him for a third term, as if that resolves all your sins on a country that was built on slavery. And this is something that kind of goes one in one with the same, though. So we have the Obama effect come in, right? But within that, where do you think the responsibility of our communities came in? I think our communities sometimes, at least the young generation, at that given time, didn't understand quite. We were so far removed from the 60s. And during the 90s, there was this falsehood that the news put up, even though the prison system was at its highest and every Latino and Black man was being put in prison under the Clinton administration. What do you think it was that when Obama got this illusion happened, do you think it was America trying just to pretend like, yes, it's all figured? Or do you think it was a genuine, hey, maybe we are in the right direction?
I honestly think a lot of people, a lot of Black people, including a lot of white and other races of liberal people, actually really thought like, we're moving in the right direction when President Obama was elected. I mean, honestly, I was in college. That was the first, president I ever voted for, and just to see that and just the way that I grew up and like the things I heard about, my mom was born in the 50s. And I was at that time very proud to be an American. Like, that's the proudest I've ever been to be an American, to be honest. Because I thought naively at that age in college that, wow, like we have really moved forward. We've really gone somewhere. And I think a lot of people felt that way too. Like, people were really proud. People were really proud. And yeah, but then that led to a lot of people starting to think we're post-racial, which I don't even know what that means. I was like, how are we post-racial? I think people felt like we've accomplished something, and so now we're good. There's nothing else we need to do. We're done. We got a black president. Good. As if that fixes every like unjust system or it fixes racism. Because in fact, what we found out is really the pendulums, went the other way, the opposite way.
Very hard.
And honestly, actually, while Obama was president,
Mm-hmm.
their hate groups were on the rise. Hate groups grew leaps and bounds during that time because there were other people who were getting, woken up to, oh man, somebody else might take over this country that I don't want. And so I think really a lot of this actually is just kind of like a response to the way that our society is and was moving.
Everitt O'Neal joins us from WXLC. Courtney Baxter, historian, museum educator, friends of the show, amazing people are joining us today on Outreach Radio Chicago and Mercado Airwaves with your host, Mike Mercado, in the beautiful, wonderful, best city in the world, Chicago, IL. Everitt, we're talking about Obama. We're talking about the Obama effect, and we'll get back to modern day stuff. But something that's a little bit tied into the modern day is Barack is considered the first social media president. And obviously we saw over this last election, 2016, how influential and how important social media was. Where do you think that plays into this entire situation that we're seeing over the last 14 days?
I think social media is a blessing and a burden at the same time. Because people are being able to see it in real time of, what we've been talking about. We do live in this era where everyone wants to document things. And unfortunately, sometimes the things people want to document can be traumatizing, such as watching someone take their final breaths on camera in an unjust way. And if not for social media, I do feel like there would still be situations where we would still have to cry wolf with no one to listen to us. And so for that, I'm grateful, but also just kind of worried because, I feel like we have yet to have reached the extreme of what can happen in the social media era.
Courtney, what do you think?
I was just thinking, like, right before this, my brother was actually texting me, and he just said, like, do phone cameras even matter anymore? Because we have so much on camera now from our phones. Like, in a way, I think it's like we can share a lot of things to kind of try to prove our point. But on the other hand, I mean, we've also seen a lot of people be acquitted even after we have video that's been shared on social media and all of that kind of thing. I think it's like anything else, pros and cons to all of the social media part of it. I feel like I've learned a lot by other people sharing things, a lot through like activists and people who know far more about these topics than I do. And on the other hand, this is also the same way that people who are in hate groups and, all kinds of things like that also share information. So it's like we're all mixed up in there. And then the thing with Twitter or something like that is like you have a little snippet of information and sometimes the stories are so complex and like what you're trying to get across so complex, it's like social media can't help you with that, right? Like it's, I don't know. So it's like a gift and a curse at the same time. But I don't know. I guess sometimes we like to use the videos too as proof. Personally, I actually have never watched any of these videos because I'm too sensitive for that. So
No, I get it. A lot of people I think it's some people do it for morbid curiosity. I think some people do it because they need to have that in their soul. I think if one thing personally is I haven't shared the Floyd video. I refuse to share it and to post it, but I've watched it because to me, in my opinion, if I'm going to come on here and I'm going to be so passionate necessarily about it, and I need to know that angry, when you see his brother out there crying, the sounds of a painful soul, like the idea of me sitting on pavement where my brother lost his life is not only one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen, but the fact that some people think it was okay. I mean, I don't know that type of pain, but I think because I don't know that type of pain, watching that video brings me to having the empathy and the sympathy of that family and all these other families, including a nurse who did absolutely nothing and got her house raided in by an unjust warrant. But we'll get to that maybe on another day. I want to stick on the empathy and sympathy part of this. For one thing, social media has brought in, and we've seen pictures of wonderful, wonderful people out there protesting and shouting their voice and showing what kind of pain they're in, including two of my beautiful young Latin cousins who are out there, who are college students, who have grown up in Chicago, CTA, born and raised, going to as Chicago gets, and they're showing us the front lines of it. And then we see the other side. We see rioting, we see looting. Let me ask you guys individually. We have a black woman and a black man. And I posted this on social media on May 31st, 7:19 a.m. So weird. I've seen more posts and opinions about the protest and the quote-unquote riots than, the whole cop killed a black man thing that started all this. Most of y'all need to stay off social media and go back to being self-centered in your own world. The Karens and Chads of the burbs might want to sit this one out. I post a lot of stuff on social media. I don't get as much interaction. I've done interviews with mayors. I've done a lot of work. Doesn't get a lot of attention. This one did. A lot of white America came out for that post.
I bet they.
Let's talk about this a little bit then. Let's start with you, Everitt, on this one. When you hear that and then you see the reaction, talk to me first about what is it about white America and maybe suburban America, because there were some Hispanics on there that were a little bit iffy. And I know a couple of black families that aren't going to go necessarily out there to go against the people. So let me ask you this: suburban America, white America, why are they all so uncomfortable when they see property damage but not life being taken, in your opinion?
Well, for those who probably own small businesses, and even for our minority brothers and sisters who probably own businesses as well, it might be a situation where it will probably take a long time for them to regroup,
right,
or recover from any major damage. And so I do understand that gripe. But for the ones who are silent about the cause for it, more than the effect that the protest has had, we know what time it is. They were looking for a reason, to have a voice and to feel somewhat justified in their reason of not hopping on board the train of being outraged and angry. And if a window being busted feels like George Floyd's death was justified, or Black Lives Matter just a little less because of it, then you're the problem, and you never really cared. You just found a reason to object. And I have an issue overall with people having the commentary about peaceful protest, because it's been demonstrated for the past few years. Of course, there was a certain quarterback from Wisconsin who played for a team in San Francisco who did a peaceful protest. He did a peaceful protest that was recommended to him by a Green Beret, mind you. So, this whole idea that he's disrespecting the military and the flag, why don't you run that by the Green Beret soldier who recommended that he do that?
Let me interject that too right now. In just a few hours, Drew Brees, the quarterback of the New Orleans Saints, Louisiana, known for its racial divide just a little bit, right? Known for its community of black people, right? Had the nerve, and mind you, this is America, you have the right to say whatever you want. But maybe, read the room a little bit and maybe not say what you're about to say when you say it's still disrespectful to kneel during the national anthem. Did you see that?
Get out. I did. I saw that. And let me tell you something. Drew Brees, like someone tweeted, like if you were ever to like do a drawing of which quarterback would be the one to put his foot in his mouth, Drew Brees would probably be like at the bottom three of quarterbacks that you think would just say something that stupid. And but lo and behold, it was him. Yeah, I was definitely disappointed in his comments because it's like you're missing the point still. And let's be honest, man. The national anthem was written by an anti-abolitionist. Like, if you go further into the verses of the song, it is not very kind to people who look like us. So I don't feel like we should be trying to honor it anyway. Because, one, it was written while we were still enslaved. And we're still not free, really. This Colin Kaepernick, let's just say his name. He took that knee because, this country isn't upholding, the promises that it's made for its people. And that's all he was trying to say. He was trying to bring awareness to the fact that police brutality is a thing of existence. It's still a thing of existence, even 2-3 years after he's been blackballed from the league. And yet we're still trying to roll with this whole idea that he's disrespecting the flag and the military. Like, no. And so, just going back to the initial point, people want this peaceful protest, but, we take a knee, we wear like hoodies or shirts that has like these social statements on it, or we'll stop in the middle of a, Hamilton play to make a statement. All of that is still not enough. Courtney's probably going to get into this, and I'm going to throw the alley-oop her way. But a lot of those people love to invoke the name of a civil rights leader that we all respect in Dr. Martin Luther King. But I feel like they often miss the point of what his demonstration really was about.
Courtney, I would love to, like Everett said, get your input on all that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I am really trying to think about what it is about the property that bothers people so much. It's because it's like, when I saw the Target in Minnesota, first of all, I love going to Target, let me just admit. But, and so I was trying to figure out what's going on that Target did. But, but am I really worried about Target? No. It's like, this is a corporation that has insurance. Do I love looting? Do I think it particularly gets anything done? No. But I do think people are looting, one, because we have to realize, too, America listens to money. And so things like looting disrupt money in our economy. And that does get attention. We also have to realize we're in a pandemic. We have to realize that people socioeconomically are disadvantaged. A lot of people are disadvantaged who are minorities. And so, people are looting places and taking things from TVs to diapers. But this is a response that we could have avoided. It didn't have to happen like this. And the peaceful protest thing, I should go back to looting real quick, too. I also don't really like the looting in Black and brown communities, especially small businesses in Black and brown communities, because I think there are people who are opportunists in here who are also taking advantage of the moment. Get mad at, the corporations, get mad at Wall Street, get mad at our federal and, state governments and that kind of thing. But like peaceful protest, that's an interesting thought because we've done that. We've done that a lot of times. I'm not saying we should not keep doing that, but we've done that. Kaepernick, great example. When he does this in silence, that's a problem. It continued to be a problem. If anyone else did it, it was a problem. We try to do silent marches. They try to do things called die-ins and things like that. Quiet things, peaceful things, but that's a problem too. People riot, or you can say have an uprising. They might loot. That's a problem too. So what exactly are people supposed to do? What people are saying is they don't want to be uncomfortable and they don't want their life to be disrupted. But the whole thing about protest is it has to be disruptive, like in some way. that's what it is. And the whole thing about King, yes, me and Everett have had some long conversations about that. I've been really irritated the last couple of years about what people have done and talked about King's legacy and his strategies that they used to try to dismantle a lot of racism in our country. Like, one, it's a strategy, it's a philosophy, it's civil disobedience. Like, we have to realize King was a very educated man. He wasn't just trying to turn the other cheek. He's really trying to do something radical and really honestly trying to shame our federal government, white racist people, into seeing that they honestly were doing the savage acts to people. They are the people who are attacking people in the streets who were singing hymns. They're the ones turning fire hoses on those people. So to try to throw in our face that, oh, well, what about Martin Luther King and he wouldn't have liked this? No, Martin Luther King did understand riots. He said, were the voices of the unheard. And that's exactly what people are doing. People are trying to do the thing that will get them heard and get them some attention to the topic. And unfortunately, it might have to be, something people don't like, but that's where we've gotten to. And you can't forget Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. Someone like Medgar Evers, also nonviolent, was assassinated. Plenty of people who have been part of the movement who've done peaceful things have been assassinated or in other ways, made voiceless. So if you don't want it to get to this level, we should have done something about it before. I'm actually reading this book called The Radical King by Dr. Cornel West. And he's, really talking about MLK has just been watered down so much. It's insane.
Courtney, being being a historian, being part of education, and then bringing up the point about MLK kind of being watered down, do you think that was not just a strategy from whatever the system was, but also kind of our own faults in the same, because we don't do the research, or we do the basic, the quote unquote basicness of it? Do you think we did that? We have Denzel playing Malcolm X, and then when we think of Malcolm X, we think of Denzel now. I mean, do you think that that's society's fault? Do you think that was on purpose? As somebody who works in education, who knows the history of this country, where do you kind of land on something like that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because my master's degree is in public history, so no one ever knows what public history is, but I would just basically explain it as I basically learned, about museums, how to manage them, ethics in museums. But what I learned a lot about too is about how people remember the past, what we call collective memory, ways to engage people with history, which is way more complicated than just looking at an object, right, in a case, or at least it can be way more than that. So I'm always interested in how people remember things historically and what we do with things, because the past was a reality, was a thing. History is an interpretation of the past, right? We can't even recreate the past. Anything we say in history is going to have a little bias because we are trying to explain something, interpret something about what happened before. So I guess I should say that first. I don't know. I guess, I think sometimes when we make people into legends, that's when we start losing the actual humanity of a person. We start losing the complex parts about that person. And I think we've overall kind of forgotten that the civil rights movement involves a lot of strategy and a lot of time. And it had people who are on the ground doing a lot of work intellectually, but just literally on the ground knocking on doors, and it involved a lot of organization. People didn't think about Rosa Parks. They act like that happened just this woman just one day decided she was tired. That's not what happened. Rosa Parks was part of an organization that wanted her to participate in this way, and they were ready when they knew that segregation was going to happen and they were going to treat her a certain way. It's a plan and it's strategic. I think the thing with King is, I don't know, I think our history education in our country needs a lot of help. And, I've actually talked to small kids about Martin Luther King Jr. I work actually at a children's museum. And we had a program about MLK Day at our museum. And these kids know about it. They're like, he was arrested, and he fought against racism. Like, these are small kids. They know like what's up, right? Because they're actually not afraid to talk about these things yet because it hasn't been scared out of them yet. But we also can't hide from kids who are small kids from junior high school age people that like really how dirty it got. Like, people did not like King. A lot of people did not like King when he was alive. A lot of white people didn't like King when he was alive. Let's be very blunt. They did not approve of a civil rights movement that was nonviolent. But they forgot about that part. There's people who are now conservative Republicans who like to tout around King to try to use for, I don't know, for whatever methods. We also have people just using King as saying like kind of kumbaya, let's all hold hands. And King was about radical love and that kind of thing because of his faith. But he also was like about, what about these economic systems? Why are we participating in this war? America, you have a real moral problem that is going to tear apart this country. And what do you know? That's what's happening.
Everitt, you got anything to add to that? That was wonderful.
I threw the lob up and she dunked it. I don't know how to follow that up.
We are joined today by Everitt O'Neal and Courtney Baxter. Everitt O'Neal is one of the best radio hosts we have here in the city of Chicago, in the state of Illinois, in the Midwest, damn in the entire universe. Check them out Saturday and Sundays, 8 to midnight on WXLC. Courtney Baxter, check her out at historicallycourtney.wordpress.com. Historian, Museum Educator. You're joining us here on Outreach Radio Chicago, on Mercado Airwaves, on WSBC 1240 AM, WNDZ 750 AM, and everywhere on the internet. So, one of the hardest parts for me throughout this entire thing, my lovely girlfriend, one of my lovely co-hosts, Nicole Mancha, one of the most educated women I know, a Latin woman, and her father is a chief of police. Her brother is a police officer. One of my best friends is a correctional officer. All Hispanic men. What we're living through right now with the police and the people, law enforcement and the people, the establishment and people, it's a complicated, emotional thing. And I lived through a perspective of a 30-year-old Hispanic man who's lived in predominantly maybe a white neighborhood at one point. I've lived in predominantly brown neighborhoods at one point. Different interaction with police officers. I'm going to start with you, Everitt, as a black man. Police and the people. Police versus the people. There's a difference. And then there's a difference between two Americas. Can you kind of give us a light of what that is for you?
I guess I'll start with, my background. So from, birth to about the age of 13, I actually grew up on the east side of Chicago, like on 85th and Stony. And honestly, I never really had much interaction with the police except for when they came to visit us at school for the DARE program. It wasn't until I moved to Oak Park after I graduated 8th grade that I really got to experience the dynamics between young black teenagers and the police. I lived in an area in Oak Park where I was probably like the only black kid on my block because Oak Park is rather segregated. They actually just made the news as well. Well, our neighboring suburb, River Forest, did because a black woman was assaulted in a River Forest Jewel Osco. And so there's a deep history of segregation and racism that they don't like to talk about in Oak Park. They like to do this thing where they want to seem like very progressive, but there's parts in Oak Park where, that's where they like to put all the black people, and the more decorative areas is predominantly white. And so I remember, just to go back to the main story, I remember one of my first interactions with police happened to be at a park. I was in the car. It was myself and a few friends. And it had gotten cold. And so we decided to just sit in the car and play some music. We were young and teenagers, and so we didn't necessarily want to go home, but we were just sitting there, and it wasn't like closing hours of the park, so we weren't breaking the law. But because it was so cold, and all the body heat was in the car, the windows fogged up, and we're just chilling, minding our business, and next thing you know, about 3-4 police cars swarm around us, and lights just kind of lights kind of blaring in our face. And they open the door and they're like, "Oh, we don't smell anything." And I guess a neighbor had assumed that we were up to something mischievous. There was another incident where I was sitting on my porch, actually, and I got questioned about what I was doing here. And I'm like, well, I live here, because that particular area doesn't really have many that look like me. And so there was always just this kind of knowing that I was in a place where I really shouldn't be, or that I really didn't belong at. And so when I think about, I guess, black people and police, and luckily, like, nothing dangerous ever really happened to me, because I was taught respectability politics at a very young age. But I do empathize with your girlfriend and her family. I was talking to a homegirl yesterday who her mom and her aunts are CPD, and they've been harassed. You know, she's kind of vented to me yesterday crying about how, you know, she was telling me that her mom has been spit on and just harassed. And, you know, she's a black woman. And so, like, she feels conflicted because, you know, she wants to be supportive, but she also wants to, you know, make sure that her mom and her aunts come back home safe. And she's having to fight this battle with people on social media where they're, like, shaming her mom, you know, for choosing to be on the force. And also, like, questioning her blackness for even, you know, choosing her family over, you know, her blackness. And so it really is a complicated situation. And it's an unfortunate situation. I don't really know how to, like, solve it. I mean, well, I do. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's always some things. But I do think, just to go back to it, and I feel like I'm just kind of all over the place, you kind of watch yourself a little more when you're in certain areas and you look a certain way. I'm like a 5'11" black dude. I'm built like a fullback. I'm dark complexioned. And so, like, I get looked at different. Then I have a bald head. Like, I remember situations where I would walk, and I could be walking the same place with people, and they'll cross the street just out of fear that I might attack them or something. Like, I'm like your typecasted Law and Order villain if you saw me. And so I know because of that, like, I'm always going to get watched a little closer by police officers.
Everett, you told me something earlier that, I mean, it gave me chills. It rocked me to my core. It made me think about my nephew, who's, you know, Puerto Rican and black. You told me that you wake up with the possibility that any interaction with a police officer can end in something. What was that?
Oh, yeah. I believe what I mentioned was that, you know, I wake up, you know, and I kind of just prep for the day. I think it was about, you asked me, like, was I angry or, you know, heartbroken or anything like that. And I told you that I don't really give myself enough room to really process all of that or be in that mindset because, like, you know, every day, you know, when I walk out, I know that I could be the next hashtag, you know? And, you know, knowing that could bring fear, but I would rather know that whatever day that's going to be, if my name is called, and hopefully it's not because of that, that I presented myself in the most truest and authentic way. Like, I'm not one who's afraid of many things, and I'm not going to be afraid then. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just try to keep moving forward.
I've done a lot of podcasts and radio in my 10 years that you and I have been in this industry. 30 years old, I consider myself one of the lucky ones who's gotten to do something I love. And when you told me that, and even hearing you say it now, it's one of the most powerful things I've still ever heard. And Courtney, when you hear that, and I know you've heard it many a time from black men, from a black woman's perspective, and when you hear that, what police and the people, police and the community, police versus the people, where are you at?
Yeah, I think it's a complicated too, because actually some of my upbringing is not actually that different from Everett. So I grew up in a south suburb of Chicago that was pretty much completely white when I was growing up, when I was in elementary school. So we were one of the few black families in the area. And so it's like, cops, nope, not bad. Like, I don't know anything bad about that. Not really, other than like what I would see in like TV or something. Um, I didn't really start becoming more aware of the problems with policing until I was older, like high school and after that. Because one, my community, experienced white flight. So most of the white people in our community left. It became mostly a black and brown community, a suburb nonetheless, but, a black and brown community, still middle class community. But also some things I think about the policing changed. And it got interesting. And the fact that I have a younger brother who he experienced actually kind of a similar story to Everett, in that him and his friends, they were in their one of their friends' cars in front of our house, just hanging out. They had went somewhere, and then they were just still like talking in the car, right? Which me and my friends, my girlfriends, have done plenty of times, especially in high school. And you're just still talking, and a cop, came up to them, asked them what they were doing. I'm guessing he also thought they were smoking weed or something. But they were just talking and kind of hassled them, and they wanted, IDs. And my brother's like, "That's literally my house right there. Like, we're in front of my house right now." And he's like, "Do you want to go knock on the door?" And all this kind of thing. But even then, as me and my mom were listening to him telling us this, at that time, we're like, you're already afraid. You're like, "Oh no, don't get rowdy with the cops," right? Because, you already know it could happen. Like, especially my mom, she's from the west and south side of Chicago. Like, she knows, what could happen. And like I said, we grew up in the suburbs, very different, not fully knowing what can happen. And it's kind of around that time that I was like, oh yeah, like this can really go a different way. And every time that this happens, and by the way, not just to just black men, right? Like you just mentioned earlier, Breonna Taylor, or other women, talk about Sandra Bland. It is pretty scary, because I mean, I'm also at the age too, like I'm 30. I want to have kids, and I'm looking forward to having kids, but it's pretty sad to think that I have to raise like my kids in a different way in the future, and explain these things to them, and be worried about them in this way. And I think a lot of black women feel that, even if they don't have kids, even if they're not black and they're with their partner is a black man, you're worried about them, right? You're worried about all the time that, yeah, they could be the next hashtag. And it's like, that definitely is exhausting to feel that way, that you have to worry about that kind of experience with the police. And at the same time, I have to say too, one of my first cousins is actually in Chicago Police Department as well, and higher up in the Chicago Police Department. But I think it really does get to this thing where people bring up the whole good cop, bad cop thing. And I do believe a lot of people who are police officers got into this right for the right reasons. They really feel like they're protecting their communities, they're doing something, or maybe they even think they're going to change the system. But I think it's been proven more and more that the police have a systematic problem, a system that is bigger than individual good cops, right? Because there are people who are police officers who are, reporting other police officers, and they get suppressed, or they are the ones who get in trouble, or, different things like that. So I definitely believe there's police officers who are good people, trying to do the right thing and all that kind of thing. But when you are in a structure that is unjust, it's it's going to be incredibly hard to overcome that. There has to be reform or just total overhaul. Start over, scrap it, start again. And I think that's kind of where the point we're getting at with our justice system, like in total, is that we kind of might have to scrap huge parts of it and try again.
Courtney, speaking of, kind of scrapping things and starting from the bottom and from the beginning, how, as a historian and working so much in with people and with children, can you talk to us a little bit about the Latin and the Black community, where we're at, where we've been, and kind of what you're feeling about, two people in this country that, maybe more than ever have so many similarities. Our babies are in cages in the South right now, and they're in the middle of a pandemic and social unrest, and they've been ripped from their parents. This is in 2020. Can you speak a little bit about the community's outreach together, or maybe lack thereof, or where we're heading to?
Yeah, I think I'm really happy I actually asked that, because so when I was an undergrad and I was studying history and stuff, I was actually really into immigration history to the U.S. and I actually studied a lot about Asian, specifically Chinese, and a lot of Latino communities, Mexican and Puerto Rican, mostly, like their experiences in America. Because to me, it was like, this is all it's all connected, right? And I think we would all profit actually from really learning about the times actually in the past that we have worked together, and times in the past that we also were targeted together by the same groups, because that's happened repeatedly. I was just reading about, have you heard of this thing called the Zoot Suit riots? Okay, so
Zoot Suits riots.
The Zoot Suit riots happened in 1943. So Zoot Suits, I'm also a little fashion historian. I love me some fashion. But Zoot Suits, they were like these 1940 suits. All like the cool kids had them. They're like these really oversized suits. And yeah, like you'd be like the hip cat to have one, right? But basically, this riot was named after these Zoot Suits in California. A lot of Mexican, Black, Filipino, like teens, young people, young men had them. But they started getting affiliated with gangwear. Like how people talk about baggy pants now is how people were trying to talk about Zoot Suits, kind of.
Wow.
And, people started associating it, with these dirty immigrants, and they're gang affiliated. This is 1943, okay? World War II is like going on, all kinds of stuff like that. And there were sailors in LA area, off-duty police officers, regular civilians who were white, who ended up getting in a fight with actually Mexican people that year. And this turned into a whole riot. It turned into a riot in which there were white people marching down the street of LA with weapons and cutting people's Zoot Suits, cutting people's hair off, because it was all associated, right, with this kind of, they saw gang and immigrants and stuff like that. But they were attacking Mexican people, they were attacking Black people, and they were attacking Filipinos, right? So even also our fellow Asian Americans who want to feel like they're not part of this story, they're part of the story too, right? I mean, people were coming and being attacked from Watts all the way down to Los Angeles, and there's even been a history of Mexican people being lynched in this country. So it's not just Black people, and I feel like we gotta realize we have a similar experience in that way. There's also the Brown Berets. Brown Berets started in the 60s. They were modeled after the Black Panther Party. They were Mexican Americans, Chicanos, who started a movement, like I said, based off Black Panthers. Part of their platform was about police brutality. And this is the 1960s. They had a chapter in Chicago. They had a chapter in Milwaukee. They had a chapter in Minnesota. Like, this is a thing that's already happened in our past, and they actually had interactions with the Black Panthers. But you don't learn about any of this in school, right? Like, have you ever heard of any of that?
No. And it goes back to what we keep saying when we say systematic issue is the history books and how kids are taught these days, and the type of education that changes from neighborhood to neighborhood. Some are taught different things. Some are, given more opportunities, have more technology, have internet, and then we wonder why, we have this enfranchised neighborhoods.
Right. It's unequal education access. We're not all being taught the same thing, not at the same time either. And frankly, like a lot of different communities of color have really been pitted against each other. Well, there's plenty of Black people also who have anti-immigrant sentiments. There's plenty of people who are immigrants who have anti-Black sentiments, right? And really, we're fighting each other when that's really not the point. And I think we could really take the time to show kids where we are actually united in fights and where we actually have fought similar issues together. And plus, we can't forget, by the way, people are Afro-Latino, so let's not forget that either.
Look at New York City, look at Chicago. I mean, look at everywhere in Miami. It's one of the most beautiful things in the entire world. I know people are gonna get mad when I say it, but when the Black and the Latino race mix together, some of the most beautiful children. All children are beautiful, to be honest with you. But like that, the idea of like that, this is some foreign concept of these our communities being mixed together. I mean, our cultures, our music, our food. It's one and the same. Go to Humboldt Park,
Very related. Like, or even historically, Brazil had way more African slaves than America had, for instance. Like, Latin America had Black people. Like, they've been had Black people. Puerto Ricans been had Black people. They already been mixed. Like,
go to the Dominican Republic. Like, it to me is fascinating, though, when people within our own cultures don't understand that. Big E, when you hear that, where do you go to? What is your mindset at?
I think that it needs to get back to what Courtney was saying. And, this has been going on for a while now where, we've always, been brothers and sisters in struggle. I mean, even in the 1960s, there was, the Black and Brown Coalition with the Black Panthers. And I want to say they were the Brown Beret or something. But it was kind of like, it was kind of like a Latino version of the Black Panthers. And so they would collaborate. We've always, seen eye to eye. And, we talked about this earlier during the sound check, that the best thing for the establishment or the institution to see is for us to be united. As long as we're divided, like how there was, a mini race war happening the first couple of days in Chicago during the looting, where they were dropping Blacks off in, heavily Latin neighborhoods where Latin kings were attacking us. Like, that's what they want. But luckily, cooler heads prevailed and we've come together. And there needs to be more of that. I was watching the video yesterday of the late Fred Hampton. And he spoke about solidarity and unity, not only with Black folks, but between, Latin folks, Asian folks, even, poor white people. Like, if we all really just came together, united as a front, and really shook some stuff up, there would really, be some noise and changes made. So what I see happening moving forward is that we do, make more progress because, as you mentioned at the top of the show, you have also been, your people has also been marginalized and singled out and victims of, unjust actions. And, we're two sides of the same coin. I mean, we spoke about this earlier, Mike. You asked me when I first saw you, what did I see? And I saw a brother from a different color, man. I saw a brother who knows the struggle and, who has his own plights and who shares a similar history of, like I said, people being oppressed. You all are equally oppressed. And it's strength in numbers. Strength in numbers. I don't really have a deep history to tell like Courtney. Courtney is the brain and I'm the heart. In this. So I will just give you very grounded emotion when I'm talking.
And I think that emotion is important, Everett. It's something that's real. You know, Courtney, I asked Everett when we were doing a sound check earlier that literally lasted 33 minutes, and maybe one day me and Biggie will release that. But you know, I asked him, "Are you mad? Are you sad? Do you have pain?" You know, for me, the last, you know, since the entire pandemic, but beyond that, like, there's so much sorrow in my soul when it comes to this. There's so much pain. There's only so much I can do. I love me and Everett, and you know, one of my other co-hosts, my brother, the good brother Alex Mercado. We love pop culture. We love it. It's our thing. Star Wars, the Marvel Universe, DCEU. We're all about all of it. Comic books, video games. You know, we see Captain America holding the shield and doing what's right for our country. We see Spider-Man being able to defend his neighborhood. Tony Stark using his brain to come up with solutions. And we can't do that. We're not superheroes. What we could do is our part. But it's frustrating because as humans, we can only do so much. I can use my platform, but I can't help that little black boy who's not going to eat tonight, or that little Mexican kid who's in a cage, or that little white kid in the country whose mom overdosed in opioid. I can't do anything. I'm feeling pain. I feel anger. I feel sorrow. What are you feeling right now?
So every time, you know, I just feel like every time this happens, it's a cycle, and you know, people get outraged, and you know, there's hashtags, and maybe some people get charged and then they get acquitted, and it's just like a cycle over and over again, or sometimes it's like overlapping several times at the same time. And you know, so when all of this started happening, I was really mad. I was really mad just because it's frustrating and it's exhausting. And it's just like, you know, so I was feeling pretty negative when this particular incident, you know, happened and people started protesting, because it's just like, I mean, it's kind of feeling like, when are we ever going to learn a lesson about something? Like, when are we ever going to actually like exit the loop, exit the cycle, and actually make some bigger changes? Because we can't keep doing this over and over again. And I do think it does make, you know, sometimes people do feel really helpless because like I said, it's an overbearing amount of things to get done. It really feels like, and some people really aren't willing to listen. Like I said, some people really are not willing to ever admit that they have been wrong about something or misinterpreted something for a long time, or have been living with a bias, a stereotype that has been affecting lots of things that they've been doing, like, because they don't want to be, you know, feel guilty. And I mean, I don't know. I have been really frustrated about that. And at the same time too, I'm just trying to figure out, like, just for my own mental health and everybody else's mental health too that is really involved in this, is like also giving yourself, like, I feel like, space to also be away from some of these things. It's hard to say, because when you're a Black person, it's hard to separate yourself once you know about these things from the grief that really racism, anti-Blackness brings to your life. But at the same time, I feel like sometimes, I was just saying to myself a couple days ago, sometimes all you can do, I feel like sometimes as a Black person, or you could insert someone else into that, another identification into that, is just be alive and be happy and proud to be who you are, like, despite what people keep trying to bring to you. Like, sometimes all I can do is just be happy to be Black, be proud of it, and not let this take my joy. So I don't know, but it is really frustrating. Like I said, as I'm like looking at the future too, I just really hope that this isn't like, I hope we just don't hand off the same America to the next generation of people, because that would be really sad.
Well, Courtney, I'm glad you brought that up. Let me ask you, when you're, let's say, heated, right? Or let's say you're agitated about something, like the raw emotion, what's going on right now. We all know, everybody who's on this call right now, that it's real when they see an angry white person compared to an angry Black person. It could be the exact same level of anger about the exact same thing, and people interpret and take it way differently. And for someone like you two, like Courtney and Everett, who's joining me today on Outreach Radio Chicago and Mercado Airwaves, I mean, white privilege for a lot of people. I mean, is that something that you have to consider every time we have to go through something like this, where it's, if I come out angry, I could be dismissed for just being another angry black woman?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say that. So I'm not gonna get started on something personal, but I was gonna say, even in a relationship before, I felt like that came up before, because it's first of all, just as a woman in general, when women get angry, right, it's turned out like, oh, women are so emotional, right? They're so emotional. Not that we can like never actually have feelings or something. I don't know what that's about. That's a whole other thing to like deconstruct. But yeah, so there's the layer of woman, then there's the layer also of being black. So, that's a whole other next level. And so, yeah, we've all heard of angry black woman, like stereotype. And it's like, yeah, no, I have the right to be angry about something. This is something to be angry about, guys. Like, it's kind of, why are you not angry about some of this? But no, I've definitely felt in certain settings I had to adjust, I guess I could say, adjust how you're reacting to something, because it's taken as you're being angry, and then once you get angry, everything you're saying after that kind of gets dismissed. And I feel like that's actually kind of what's happening with like rioting or looting. Once you get angry and display it, like everything that you're actually talking about gets dismissed by a lot of people. So you're just being unreasonable. You're being considered unreasonable. And let's not forget, by the way, how many weeks ago, not that many weeks ago, a lot of white people displayed their rage about stay-at-home orders. They went to Capitol and they walked in the street with assault weapons. I was blown, by the way, that I saw weapons inside of Capitol buildings. I was like, you can do that? And as most black people were thinking, now if a black person went to a Capitol building with an assault weapon, would they get out of there alive? Probably not.
And they can't deal with the cell phone, let alone an assault weapon. Are you kidding me?
Right, like we're talking about people walking around with assault weapons in broad daylight in government buildings, next to our local and state leaders. That's okay. I saw people yelling into the faces of police officers, and they walked out there just fine. It's okay to yell in the face of a cop in that instance. It's just was funny how quickly certain people forgot about Blue Lives Matter when that happened. But people marching around after curfew, that's okay for them to be tear gassed, though. That's okay for rubber bullets to be shot at people's faces, though. That's okay.
Well, with only after half an hour notice, and that they shut down the CTA, and when they raised the bridges. Yeah, no big deal. We're definitely living in Gotham. Everett, I mean, what can you add on when you hear that, and kind of where you're at today emotionally?
Well, yeah, just to piggyback off of Courtney, I'm very, and I can probably speak for Courtney as well. We're both very spiritual people, and so I'm very deep in my spiritual practice, and I've also incorporated Stoicism into my daily practice as well. And the not even just angry black woman, but just angry black. Just it's one of the things that kind of hovers over us. Like we aren't allowed to feel things, at least publicly, and especially someone who looks like me. If I just raise my voice an octave, people will tend to feel unsafe. So I often do have to take the Lovey Smith approach, where I'm just very, even keeled with the way that I speak. Because if I get too excited, then all of a sudden, I'm going to sound aggressive and whatnot. But as far as like how I'm feeling emotionally, it's like what Courtney said, it's a cycle. And, this just happened to be the moment where it was the straw that broke the camel's back. And for me, when moments like these happen, like I said in the pre-roll, that, I feel what I got to feel. I feel rage and anger because this was like straight up murder. But like my first instinct is to really kind of be of service to others. And so what really happens for me is that my want to serve amplifies. We speak about my radio career and I'm a part-timer because, during the week I actually work with middle schoolers. And I actually plan on going back to school to pursue a career in social work. And so I really have a desire to really be out in the field and really doing my part and kind of being a voice for those who don't feel strong enough to speak for themselves. And so, like, all of this just amplifies my need to, kind of be that change and to provide and to, figure out what my role is in all of this. And so that's, what I get from it. I can't really afford to stay in fear too long because that's kind of what they want. And that's kind of what, the media's role is as well, is to, kind of manipulate the mind. It's a lot of psychological warfare happening when, they just constantly want to feed you with tragedy and, running back things that, our president has said, or, you'll go to social media and there's just always something new happening where, there's people getting rubber bullets to the head or, people getting assaulted. Like, it really is this tactic where they just want to kind of just wear us down and surrender. And like, for me personally, I can't give them what they want. And so I kind of go the opposite way where I, power up and really, whatever anger I do have, I use it to push forward and try to be of service to my people as allies and really just, try to provide some kind of hope when we're feeling hopeless. And right now, like, a lot of people do feel hopeless. Even with, the additional officers being arrested, we know it's not really a victory until we get a conviction. Mm-hmm. And, history has shown us that those convictions don't always favor us, and I know we keep saying, like, we're not going to talk about it really or harp on it, but Breonna Taylor's killers, they haven't been arrested at all. Like, they're still free. Trayvon's murderer is free. A lot of these people who murdered, black people, they are free. And so, like, we can't be happy with just the arrest.
How important is it going to be, Courtney, for the community to show up in November?
It's going to be, I think it's always, I personally vote. I intend on voting. This one's going to be a hard one, y'all. Yeah. Because I don't know. But I always advocate voting because personally, just for me, like, I don't know, it's just always been that important to me. And I grew up, like, learning a lot about Black history. Honestly, every year we used to watch Roots, the miniseries, like, from the 70s. Y'all, I used to watch that every year. We used to watch that every year growing up. So kind of crazy. But so just knowing how many people fought for that right and not even that long ago fought for that right or still fighting for that right, honestly, I do feel like it is really necessary to vote. I think, but it's also necessary to vote and also be informed about who you're voting for. And I mean, we have the internet right here, so it's like, use it to know who you're voting for. Also, don't just vote for the president. Vote for other things. That's important.
Everett, anything to add come November?
Just like Courtney, it's going to be really hard. And if I could be completely honest, I wish there was a formidable third party opponent. Mm-hmm. A lot of voices that sound like ours. And so it's really going to be crucial to, pay attention, to both candidates. Particularly one in particular who, would really like to have our vote if our blackness depends on it. I hope that there's some kind of growth from that. And, I think it's also going to come down to, like, his vice president and also how he performs in these debates and just on the campaign trail. He's saying all the right things now after that hiccup with Charlemagne. But, it's all lip service for now. But November will be important. I feel like either way, whatever happens on November, whether the guy currently in charge wins or loses, it might be anarchy.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, Courtney, do you think as someone you mentioned that you were thinking about having children. I know personally, my girlfriend and I have talked about it. In the future, Biggie's one of the proudest papas without being a dad I've seen with some of the kids he's worked with. And what do you hope for when you hear this? I mean, I know what we think might happen regardless of who the president is, but as we kind of start winding down, what are you hopeful for? What do you want to see? Not just the we all know what the general answer is, but what do you want to see?
Yeah, that's a question that all of us need to, especially, this is something that activists do, but I think we all need to really think about what are the goals, for all the things that we're doing, all these protests. What are the goals for all these letters and emails we're writing, or things we're donating to? And I mean, I think for me, I definitely think we need a lot more empathy, not just between races and things like that, but on topics of religion, on sexuality, on several things. I really, really, really think we need to work on our empathy. I think I want a future where we have a lot more mental health support than policing in prison. Um, I think that actually is a huge contributor to a lot of this. I want to see a future where people actually can make a living without killing themselves in order to work. Because I don't think, I have no problem with working. I work hard. I have no problem working, but we're also not here just to work. And so I think, economic equality was something I want to see too. Um, and I really do feel like at this point, like I said, the justice system really needs to be reformed. I think our education system needs to be reformed. Um, like I said, I think that all those still goes to the core of empathy. In order to be empathetic, though, we have to be open. We have to be educated. We have to acknowledge our parts, our negative and positive in different systems and things like that. Recognize our own privilege. I even have my own privilege. Even I'm a Black woman, but I'm also a middle class person, or at least raised middle class person. I have different privileges as well that other people don't have. So we also got to take time to reevaluate ourselves. And I just hope we can, in the future, really start getting honest about things and really seeing the humanity in each other, and being able to actually discuss and debate and disagree in a way that's actually like a mature, stable person would do. And we just, because we aren't there right now. And so it's just, I don't know, it's scary. It's kind of scary. And me and Never talk about this as well, which I'm not even go down this lane. But, the person, like my boyfriend that I'm really serious with, and, we're moving, towards the future of that together and everything. But I'm in an interracial relationship. So it's like, that's also a whole other bag of interesting, confusing things. Like I said, especially considering our racial climate.
It's funny, Courtney. It is something for an entire different conversation. But Biggie and I talked about it in the cutting room floor. Was I've dealt with my own racial issues within my own community because of being a light-skinned Puerto Rican and Mexican, and only speaking so much Spanish. And it's really interesting your perspective being an interracial couple, and God willing, or the universe willing, what your future may bring, what that might mean for, potential children and all that. It's an interesting perspective, and, something we'll definitely maybe talk on a future episode. But Everitt, how are you feeling about the future? What do you want to see?
Well, a lot of what Courtney wants to see, especially improvements in the education system, as well as just a better work-life balance. I don't believe we were brought here to just grow up and then become adults and pay bills and die. I definitely feel like there needs to be an improvement in the work schedule, as well as a sustainable way to still, live and pay bills and stuff. In a perfect world, sure, we would love to live in this utopian society, but I know that is far-fetched. I actually appreciate diversity of thought. I love that, we all do kind of have different life experiences, and, we have different beliefs. I think where that difference comes in at is when those beliefs become a threat on one's own humanity. And kind of like what Courtney said, I would love to, partake in like a civil discourse where it's more of like a sharing of ideas where we're both elevating each other's POVs versus telling someone that they're just wrong. I would like to see an improvement within our own community as well. Courtney kind of touched on it briefly with interracial relationships, but I also would like to see better treatment of the LGBTQ community, within our community as well, because unfortunately we can often perpetrate the behaviors of our oppressors when it comes to the way they're treated. And, Courtney and I both have friends, close friends as well, who are in that community. And I, even though I'm very proud and I don't shame away from it, I can do a better job of protecting them and speaking up for them. And so I would like to also do my part in just dismantling the patriarchy, because I do believe a lot of that is rooted in that infrastructure, and really just providing freedom for everyone to live the way that they want to live, whether that be man, woman, child, no matter the race, gender, or size. I believe that we do police each other too much in the way that we live, and we have enough on our plate as it is, and we don't really need to be trying to trip each other up just because of how we choose to live our personal lives. That's nobody's business, at the end of the day. And so I would just like to see a little more liberty in that.
It has honestly been. I have done, I'm a little clout here. I've done interviews with world champions, Academy Award nominees, Grammy winners, best-selling authors, scientists, doctors, politicians, mayors. Nothing has come close to what I feel like we've done today, and that's solely on Everitt O'Neal, Courtney Baxter joining us. I don't know what the future is going to bring. I don't know what tomorrow is going to be like. Every day we wake up to something different. The one thing I know is there are a lot of good people out there that are hurting, that are suffering, that want to be heard, that haven't been heard. And today, you heard three people who are just trying to figure it out. And that's what's happening right now, is we're trying to figure this out. And it sure as hell took long enough, but damn it, we're not going to do it. And this is just one. I'd be naive to say that we just solved the world's problem, guys. We did it. The truth of the matter is, though, is we took a step. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of you guys. Courtney, I'll start with you. You can check her out, historian, museum educator, Courtney Baxter, historicallycourtney.wordpress.com. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to quickly piggyback off what Everett said, too, about the LGBTQ community. I definitely have thought more, too, when we had recently talked about this, about we have to realize, too, people are Black and in the LGBTQ community, y'all. Like, you got to talk about that. And Black Lives Matter was started by Black women, some of which are in the LGBTQ community. So many people important to the movement, even in the past, like James Baldwin, huge intellectual, openly gay, like in the 60s. Bayard Rustin, a huge organizer for MLK, who was gay and later fought a lot for gay rights, but, actually kind of got in trouble with the movement because, he at the time was working with a Southern Christian Black organization, and, it became a kind of a conflict between some people in the movement who didn't want him to be involved. There's plenty of Black, gay, and lesbian, trans people. Marsha P. Johnson, reason that we basically had Pride Month and the start of really the gay rights movement a Black trans person. I mean, we do have to like I said, it does really go back to empathy to education and realizing in order to gain our civil rights, our more of our freedoms, we don't have to uh, step on people in order to, be more free. We don't have to oppress other people in order to be in a better standing. And so I just feel like I would also just encourage people to get really educated about things, even if it's watching like a really well researched documentary. Like 13th is on Netflix. Like everybody got Netflix. Like go watch 13th or something. I Am Not Your Negro. That's on Amazon Video. That's about James Baldwin. There's just a lot of things. Podcasts. Pod Save the People is out there. And one YouTube I really watch a lot. You want some womanism, some Black feminism, and different things about this. Or Harriet on YouTube is really good.
Everitt O'Neal, Saturday and Sundays from 8 to midnight on WXLC. Everitt, Big E, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just to piggyback off of you, Mike, when it all comes down to this, please know that I'm just a guy trying to figure it out. I don't have all the answers. I only am just giving my thoughts. So please do not look at me as like Roland Martin or any other prominent Black voice. I'm just one person with a thought. And Mike, I really appreciate you providing the platform for myself and Courtney to speak. Education is key for our allies out there. If you really want to be an ally, do the work, educate yourself. Do not come to us to do the labor for you because we tired, right? We're off the clock. So it's up to you to do it if you're really about it. Courtney provided you with some resources, movies, and books you can read. One book I'm reading that right now is the Autobiography of Malcolm X, and really getting to know him right now again, as he's probably one of my more favorite leaders during that civil rights era. But yeah, just do the work. Nothing works if you don't. And once again, Mike, I really appreciate it. And this is just the seed that's been planted. But I definitely feel like there's going to be some growth. I'm confident in it. I don't know how it's going to look overall. It's definitely going to be a lotus flower. And I definitely think it's going to get a little dirtier and muddier as time goes along. But I do hope that that flower will bloom, and we got to let it bloom, especially for our babies. I feel like our generation, our age range, we are the cycle breakers. We're the ones that say that this stops with us because we don't want to raise our babies in this. We really don't. I know I don't. Like the kids that I'm working with now, I don't want them to have to grow into this. And so we really do have to be the trailblazers. And so, yeah, a small conversation can really cause a domino effect. So I'm really appreciative.
This has been one of the greatest episodes, one of the greatest things I'll do in my career. I don't care what awards, what sponsors, what 4 letters I ever work for. This was a moment that I needed. This is one of many moments that I need, that we all need. I want to thank my guests today who have made me a better person, have opened my eyes to a lot of different things, have opened dialogue to hopefully a lot of different people. For all those who are listening who disagree with us, respectfully disagree with us, we see you, we understand. It's not always going to be 100%. But if you hear us, if you listen to us, that's all we can ask for. For all the trolls out there, you're going to do what you do. It doesn't hurt my soul. It doesn't hurt these 2 other people's souls. We know who we are. We know what we do. And for all the allies out there, I know that word has been taken, has been marketed, it's been kind of bastardized. But you know what I mean when I say allies. For all you out there, hold your head up. Wipe off that tear. Wipe off that sweat above your brow. The work isn't over, but the fight is a good one. I don't have all the answers. I never will. I won't save the world. Who knows if it is going to be able to be saved. we can make a better day. I want to thank Everitt O'Neal. Check him out Saturday and Sundays from 8 to midnight on WXLC. I want to thank Courtney Baxter, historian, museum educator. Check out her work, historicallycourtney.wordpress.com. I want to thank each and every one of you. I want each and every one of you to be safe. I want each and every one of you to be loved. Hug a loved one. Talk to somebody. Listen. It's the biggest weapon we have. Use your voice. For everybody here at Outreach Radio Chicago, from Mercado Airwaves, for Everitt O'Neal, for Courtney Baxter, I'm your host, Mike Mercado.